All right, everyone. It's now being announced that it is likely that Jinping and Trump are going to meet next month at the Mar-a-Lago, just a few weeks away, and that they may then be pretty much at the end stage of finalizing a full, comprehensive trade deal overhaul between the U.S. and China. Now, you remember, when Trump first announced that he wanted to revisit trade deals, all of his, detractors said, well, he can't do, number one, he can't do it. Number two, he's going to fuck with the economy and probably bring us to a depression. The opposite has happened. You've already got the USMCA overhaul of NAFTA with Canada and Mexico. You've got an overhaul of some tariffs and minor sort of parts of trade with the European Union. You have constant talks going on with North Korea that have begun to lead to the infrastructure being actively reconnected between North and South Korea. You could end up with a trade deal between the United States and North Korea at some time in the near future. And then China is really the capstone because it's the number 2 world economy. Huge amount of trade goes on, and especially here's why the Chinese were willing to, accede to certain aspects that they otherwise probably wouldn't. Trump made it clear he was willing to fight a tariff war. The problem is China's economy is lopsided compared to ours. We absorb a lot of goods, they sell a lot of goods. In a tariff war, the one selling the goods is the one that's typically going to lose, especially when the United States doesn't buy its number 1 amount of stuff from China. Our main trade partner actually by volume is Mexico. China's number 2, and a fairly distant number 2 at that. Major trade partner, but we are by far their largest absorber of goods. A massive total. I think we're double digits ahead of anybody else. In such a situation, it was always a virtual guarantee that Trump would manage to gain concessions. He already has. He got his, a 3-month freeze on certain tariffs. China blinked almost immediately on automotive. And that's, I think, the big thing. Trump is looking, you'd see during the election when he was talking about things of nature with regards to the economy, with regards to trade and manufacturing, you could tell what he was going to focus on. Mainly automotive. That's a big Rust Belt issue. To bring Detroit back, what do you think happens to Michigan's voting tendencies? That's the big one. That's the gem in the crown for Trump, would be to bring automotive roaring back to life in parts of the Rust Belt. It is possible, very difficult. This would lay the groundwork for it. And the other one is just heavy manufacturing of things related to mechanics, like engines and tractors and things of that nature. Tractors, okay, technically automotive in a manner, crosses with agricultural. That's another big thing, actually. Now, Trump right now, it's very, very funny because Trump's trade wars have hit a couple of small niche industries, namely the U.S. soy and cranberry industries. And so I've seen more headlines about cranberry growers being angry at Trump, all 10 of them, than I've ever seen of any coverage of the fact that he's managed to secure all these other deals. I remember when the USMCA was nearing finalization and they were getting the media got a basic preliminary view, they were trying to crucify him because, this is like a globalist trade deal and stuff. Well, make up your mind. Which is it? Is Trump a hyper-populist that wants total protectionism and he wants to wage non-stop economic war, or is he basically just trying to gain a few concessions? The answer is both. He's definitely going the populistic route by gaining those concessions, is the whole point. The idea is you make the big ask, you go in there with a lot of bluster and negative rhetoric, people get shocked, and then they're willing to deal with you, and then you say, okay, like, let's calm down, go back to the baseline. There are certain things that I can't compromise and that must be fulfilled, but these other things, let's talk about them. That's Trump's negotiating style. It's the exact opposite of like the anti-Brexit Brexiteers like Theresa May, who are pretending that they're in favor of this. She went in and gave a meek ask and said, well, we'll give you anything that you want, just basically strike a deal with us. Oh, that's a wonderful negotiating position. Hey, I will roll over and you can hammer me in the ass as much as you want. Just please, be benevolent towards me. You're counting on the other person's benevolence. Trump's like, I can be benevolent towards you under the right circumstances. So there should be a finalized trade deal. Now, another reason why China is willing to do this is China's economy is fundamentally restructuring anyway. Going slowly from that mass exporter of cheaper goods and knockoff goods in many cases, more of an antagonistic foe on the world stage, really, in many ways, to a bit more conciliatory, because now their economy is having its own problems. Their middle class is growing. They want more consumer goods. They can't get it cheap enough internally because they got to keep up exports, so their economy starts shrinking in growth, and then the investment flees and they go into a tailspin. And China, the fucking the central planners in China know that's what would happen. So they're saying, we'll export manufacturing even further. We'll put it in East Africa and other countries in Asia, where it's even cheaper than the middle class will work for here. We want to be a post-industrial economy now. We want to be one of the big boys in this party of decadence. I don't know how well that's going to work out for them because I can see multiple hazards ahead. But unfortunately for China, got sort of fenced into a corner where it had no choice but to negotiate. We had this lopsided situation where virtually all U.S. goods are precluded from their marketplace because they are inordinately expensive. So that even that new middle class isn't going to buy our goods. Well, the United States wants to sell to those 100 million middle-class Chinese people. We just need some of the tariffs removed. Then they can get U.S. automobiles and U.S. everything else. It'll be wonderful. Great for our economy. Our manufacturers find a whole new market, number one, lots more investment, and then they get the investment. And that investment allows them to fund other pet projects and keep the growth going. Now, eventually it stops. China's running out of room in a big way, but it helps, arguably, kick the can down the road. That's why I say that the U.S. century has just begun. We got plenty of room for expansion. Does China? Does Europe? Hell, India doesn't have much room to expand anymore. They're the big boy of Asia now for the next couple of decades. Although, I think they've been making a few mistakes lately, but we'll get into that in a separate video. There are some worrying developments going on in India with regards to maybe the fundamental restructuring of their culture and the way they do business. It would be terrible if, imagine they become hostile towards China and they end up bickering. Could lead to a regional nuclear war that could really fuck this world for a very long time. So Jinping will be going to the Mar-a-Lago. I imagine that Trump's going to try to get him loaded on cocktails and golfing before they negotiate. But Trump's apparently stone cold sober, although I do think that he probably does occasionally use uppers of some sort. I think that some people said, well, he's probably an Adderall. Maybe. And who fucking cares? He's doing a good job. He's going to win another trade deal for us. It'll be better than the one we had before. And even here's the way in which Trump has operated. He didn't say, well, I need 100% of everything in this trade deal to improve U.S. economy. No, he says, I'm going to pick away a little by little at tariffs. This tariff goes from 10 to 5. That little one that almost is meaningless gets removed. I'm going to pick away at these little things. And if you take, it's like, here, you have a bowl. You can put a slice of bread in it. It's obvious. A bowl is now full of bread. Or you can take a bunch of little crumbs here and there from a bunch of loaves and slowly fill the bowl that way. The bowl is full either way, but the other part, does the person you're taking the bread from notice that there's a little tiny crumb removed from the bottom of their piece of bread? Probably not. He goes right under these people's noses. It's actually amazing to see him work at this. This is his big forte. Trump's main strength all along has been he's a money and jobs guy. And trade being directly tied into that. Foreign policy he's doing well on. In fact, better than I expected. His weakness is domestic policy. He rankles some people over here. Admittedly, a problem for him. I think going forward into the election, though, having another major trade deal, especially with China, which everyone thought he could never accomplish. Possibility of peace breaking out in Korea, maybe even in Syria, although he has decided to leave 400 troops there, which rankles me. Not exactly a war, but it's like, it's pointless. It's not going to solve anything. He's like, well, we must protect Israel. Oh, it's the ultimate cop-out, trust me. On trade, though, he's getting an A+ on that, too. He's pretty close to it now. I'd give him a B+ on trade right now. The USMCA NAFTA overhaul made the European Union fold on the automotive sector within literally days. He's doing pretty well, all things considered. That's about all. Peace out.